Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to explore a fascinating topic, the concept of the self in Asian thought, and how it relates to our identity as Filipinos. We often ask ourselves, who am I? Or what makes me, me? Different cultures have different answers, and Asian philosophies give us some unique perspectives. Let's dive into how Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism view the self, and then reflect on what the Filipino identity looks like in our everyday lives. Part 1. The concept of self in Asian thought. Hinduism, the self is universal, Atman. In Hinduism, the true self, called Atman, is connected to Brahman, the universal reality. Imagine you're a drop of water, and Brahman is the ocean. While you feel like an individual drop, the truth is that you're always part of the larger ocean. The goal is to realize this connection, that we are all part of something much bigger than ourselves. Real-life scenario. Think about moments when you feel deeply connected to nature, like standing on a mountain and feeling like a tiny part of the vast universe. That's a bit like realizing Atman. You might be just one person, but you're part of a larger, interconnected world. The non-self, anatta. In Buddhism, the self is not something fixed. Instead, everything about us is always changing. Our thoughts, emotions, even our bodies. This idea is called anatta, or no-self. Clinging to a rigid identity causes suffering, and letting go of that attachment brings peace. Real-life scenario. Imagine you've changed jobs, moved to a new city, or even just outgrown an old hobby. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. The Buddhist idea of anatta encourages you to accept these changes, rather than hold on to an old version of yourself. Confucianism, the relational self. Confucianism teaches that the self is shaped by our relationships and roles in society. You're not just an individual. You're a daughter, a friend, a colleague. Your identity grows through your moral actions and how well you fulfill these roles. Being a good person is about living in harmony with others. Real-life scenario. Picture a family reunion where everyone pitches in to help. You play a role, whether it's cooking, organizing, or simply being there for emotional support. In Confucianism, your self is built through these actions and the love you show to your family and community. Taoism, flowing with nature. Taoism tells us that the self should flow with the natural order of things, rather than fight against it. This idea is known as Wu Wei, or effortless action. It's about aligning with the Tao, or the way of the universe, and going with the flow of life. Real-life scenario. Ever had a day where everything just seemed to go right without you forcing it? Maybe you went for a walk and naturally stumbled upon the perfect spot to relax, or you had a conversation that flowed effortlessly. That's Wei, in action, when you stop forcing things and let life unfold naturally. Part 2, representation of the Filipino self. The Filipino concept of self is shaped by our connections with others, especially through shared identity, a sense of propriety, and a deep gratitude to others. Let's see how these ideas show up in real life. Shared identity. In Filipino culture, we don't just see ourselves as individuals, we see ourselves in relation to others. Shared identity means recognizing that we are part of a larger community. Real-life scenario. Think of a community moment, like when people come together to help someone in need. Maybe it's neighbors helping rebuild after a storm, or friends pitching in for a heartfelt serenade for a loved one. These acts show that our identity is tied to how we support each other. This is shared identity in action. Sense of propriety. This is the Filipino sense of propriety, or social awareness, where we're very conscious of how our actions affect others. It's the feeling that keeps us in check when we think about how our behavior might be judged by society. Real-life scenario. Ever been hesitant to refuse a favor, even if it inconveniences you? That's your social awareness kicking in. You're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about how saying no might disappoint someone or damage the relationship. This sense of propriety keeps us mindful of our social responsibilities. Debt of gratitude. Debt of gratitude, or a sense of reciprocal obligation, is deeply ingrained in Filipino culture. When someone does something meaningful for us, we feel a strong sense of responsibility to return the favor, creating a cycle of giving and gratitude. Think about when a relative helped you pay for school. and later on, you felt the need to give back by helping them with their medical expenses or assisting their children. That's debt of gratitude, our way of saying, I remember the help you gave me, and now I'm here for you. The global Filipino. With many Filipinos working abroad, the concept of the Filipino self has expanded beyond the Philippines. The global Filipino represents a modern identity that is rooted in tradition while being exposed to global influences. Real-life scenario. Picture a Filipino who has worked abroad coming home with gifts, not just because it's expected, but because they still feel deeply connected to their Filipino roots. This shows that the Filipino self is flexible, adapting to both local and global contexts. Conclusion. To sum up, the Asian concept of self revolves around connection, relationships, and balance. In Hinduism, the self is universal and connected to a greater reality. In Buddhism, the self is ever-changing, and letting go of attachment brings peace. In Confucianism, the self grows through our relationships with others. And in Taoism, the self flows harmoniously with the natural world. For Filipinos, the self is shaped by shared identity, a sense of propriety, and a deep gratitude to others. Whether we are living in the Philippines or abroad, the Filipino self remains deeply connected to our relationships and responsibilities to others. Understanding these perspectives helps us appreciate how different cultures view the self and how we as Filipinos carry these values in our everyday lives. Thank you, and I hope you found today's discussion insightful.